Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad to have you join me for this Masterclass intensive. This is a very important time for kingdom works to be coming forth. And so much has been shifting in terms of how we engage our callings and how we start to reposition what God is doing and starting to set up our kingdomprenurial success in very different ways. Some of what I'm going to be sharing with you today is not new in terms of some of what you've already been doing, some of you, so to speak, but giving a different context for a new era and to bring forth the expansion, but also the evolution of your kingdom purpose. So what I'm going to be speaking with you about during this time is really around the basics of launching your digital product, minister-preneurial, multimedia production style empire. And I know that's a mouthful, but there's a lot to be covered, and we are going to cover it in a short amount of time. Going to encourage you to definitely take notes. I always find that it's very helpful when individuals jot down some of the ahas that they receive initially from what I'm going to be providing. Of course, you'll have the opportunity to go back and listen to this several times. But I think it's vital during this time that you be present and you really start to open up yourself in a new way so that what is ready to shift in and through you for this next level of kingdom purpose really can come, in a much more expansive way, because that's exactly what Christ is wanting to do in and through you. So I want to start off by talking about digital products and why that's so important. Now, digital products, as far as it relates to ministry, is nothing new. Digital products have been out for quite some time, or I should say just products in general. Ministry products have been out for quite some time. But because we do live in a digital dominating era, it's very important in terms of being able to position yourself in a global way, but taking it to the next level and not just being a ministry, so to speak, that has products or digital products, but actually empiretizing this with spiritual entrepreneurship, with ministry entrepreneurship. And the reason why this is key is because a lot of times people feel called to start a ministry, but they also know that even though there are the nonprofit aspects to ministry, but also ministry to a certain level, if it's going to be done, not necessarily from a career-based perspective, but something that's going to be engaged full time, there has to be both the impact and income for it to be the divine right value exchange that the Lord would have for you as you are serving him, right? So that's important. So when we think about empires, most of the time people are thinking about large corporations, big businesses, and sometimes attribute that to sort of worldly success, like a carnal mindset for business building. But nothing could be farther from the truth, because when God gives us a kingdom initiative, this kingdom initiative is establishing thy kingdom come on earth, which kingdoms are empires, all right? They are. They're forms of empires. And you are given a kingdom agenda in an entrepreneurial format. So that's what we're encasing in terms of ministry-preneurial format. Now, digital products, as I mentioned, are vital to this expansion because it's something that can be reached globally. And with the online web, World Wide Web, so to speak, that has made the world a lot smaller in terms of the connection that you can do your missionary work in a very different context, because the global online web helps you to spread that, all right? And so being able to allow individuals to purchase products from you through the online web, World Wide Web, is going to benefit you tremendously. But again, most of you have products, some of you do, but this is where you will have to step it up, where it is more empiretizing, and you do actually have not just a strand of your ministry that is about digital products, but literally this becoming the embodiment for this level of your ministry. Now, it's going to get interesting in terms of where I'm going to go with this to open up and expand you. Why during this time you want to focus on digital products? Here's why. Because the next level of what wants to come through you, as far as God's desire, is something much more expansive that puts you into another bracket of kingdompreneurship. But what you're currently working on and some of the older, let's say, ministry aspects that you have been leveraging throughout the years, those are now coming to a halt. And when I say halt, meaning because there's a shift taking place, which means that everything up until this point, even if you believe that it's your grander vision that God has given to you that you're working on, let me just say to you, that is but a seed of conception, because there's something much more emerging. Now, metaphorically, this is likened to an acorn that contains the encoding of an oak tree. And when you plant that acorn and you nurture it accordingly, we have a mighty oak that is in process of growing. You have been in a very unique metamorphosis within your ministry that's transitioning you into this mighty oak, oaks of righteousness, so that you can be displayed for the Lord's splendor in a much more magnificent way. And this magnificent way is to be magnified during this time. And so you have been this acorn that received a seed of conception in terms of a vision, and your process throughout the years has been growing this mighty oak. But the acorn is not the oak tree, which means the acorn, the vision that you originally received from the Lord, that you have been growing over the years, that is not the main ministry. And this is why a great majority of individuals who step into the ministerial field are finding themselves sort of struggling at this point, even to really hear from God in terms of what is the next level for the kingdom expansion? What is the next level for the ministry? So what once started out as being something that you were on fire for, and you know that the Lord put in your heart to do and to bring forth, some of you are wondering, why is this not really advancing, especially over a duration of time, the way that you envisioned that the Lord would have you do it? Again, because when you received the vision, you received it at seed level, and you mistake that for being the end all be all. I teach this a lot in the entrepreneurial strand in terms of branding and understanding how individuals would take a concept and believe it to be the end all be all for their brand and their business. And they start building businesses around this idea, not understanding that the idea was but a seed of conception, a seed of conception. Anytime I receive a divine idea, I know that the idea itself is not the end all be all. So I don't actually need to start building out any type of brand or business or ministry based on just the revelation of that seed. So here's where digital products serve. Anything that you start to receive as a conceptual idea, that's exactly what it is. It's conceptual. And it has to incubate, it has to grow. And so as it starts to grow, you will start to see what emerges more. So where digital products come into play is that when you receive some type of wisdom or insight of a divine idea that seems to be even like a bigger ministry concept, start creating products around that topic. And in fact, again, as I mentioned before, everything up until this point is content. It is digital products. Even the bigger thing that you believe that God has given to you to work on, trust me, they're products. But as you begin to produce these products, then the emergence of what wants to come forth, you're going to be able to see that in real time in evolution. But it's not until you actually start creating a great base of content through digital products, and at various levels, whether some of them may be free, but at different price points, even up to high-end types of products. And you want to be able to create a tier of these types of offerings. And they can come in a variety of different formats. They can come in Sunday school formats, a Wednesday night Bible study formats. They could definitely be master classes, sermons, sermonettes, different formats of products that you can produce and then start to categorize. You also can do teaching and training digital products. Create your own seminary style products, right? Your own Bible college style types of products. Because once you start to create in this expansion, again, you're going to start seeing a different level of development come forth, and it will help you to also see why maybe some of what you've been doing in ministry isn't expanding as you believe that it should. Because underpinning is so much. It's a bamboo system. And if you're familiar with how Chinese bamboo grows, you actually don't see any activity on surface for the first 4 years because that bamboo is developing a very strong root system underneath. And in the 5th year, it shoots up like overnight between 90 to 96 feet. And so what's been incubating within your ministry kingdom agenda is there's so much from the acorn that was planted that actually within the acorn was not just a mighty oak to come forth, but there was a bamboo seed encoding in there as well. So there's so much that's been under the radar, if you will, that is emerging. How you start to detect and to see this come forth, again, is when you start bringing out those products. When you start releasing those products and bringing them forth, and as I mentioned, in various formats, and some of them don't have to be long form content. In fact, I encourage you to create short form content, low to medium style content for these initiatives. Even if they're mini courses or mini classes, as I mentioned, master classes or so, mini trainings, you want to bring these forth, or maybe there's series of trainings. And I don't want you to think about the great abundance in terms of, oh my gosh, it just seems like so many. No, because this is about you having a digital product base that is very massive. If that is the ministry at this point. So I want you to look at the digital product concept is it is what you're in, quote unquote, kingdom business, ministry-preneurial activity for now. And I'm going to start to bridge this into how the multimedia effect in terms of you and productions, which is so important, is going to be vital for this type of initiative. But we want to start with embodying this level of your ministry being all about products. Now, some of you are probably saying, but I want the live connection with individuals. I want to be able to still be preaching and teaching. And if you are not, let's say, engaged in a congregation where you have your own church at this point, this is going to be very signature for you right now, because it's actually been to your benefit not to actually have a church at this point. But even if you do, this is still vital. And a few other options is that this also gives you the opportunity to be more mobile and global in terms of even travel ministry, but also doing virtual media ministry on a completely different scale. And since I brought up scale, what I'm going to be sharing with you during this Masterclass Intensive is for you to be able to successfully scale this type of expansion. All right. So, of course, I encourage you to take notes. So I'm sure you're doing that, and definitely continue. So before I move forward and start really bridging the media aspect in with this, I want to talk more about the digital products and share with you a few platforms in which you can really start to effectively build out. But before I actually start talking about that, here's also something that I want to expand your awareness around or introduce to you during this time, is when you're thinking in terms of your ministry, don't just think in terms of just a Christianity perspective. You also have to think about a humanitarian calling. So when you think about Joseph and his coat of many colors and where his journey landed him, so to speak, positioned him for his greater expansion, it was not just about a, let's say, a kingdom agenda initiative for a specific group of people. The grains in the storehouses that were established during that time was to be able to facilitate for a famine, for regions, all right? And so you have to think in terms of your kingdom initiative of being from a multi-interest perspective as well, as you are serving your primary ideal audience, all right? This is a Christ initiative for sure. Jesus said, I came to seek and save that which is lost. And I've also come that they may have life and have it more abundantly. And so Jesus had a humanitarian calling because he died for all. His ministry, his works was for all. Now, later, of course, then you have the apostles and others to rise up, and they framework it into a Christian perspective. But Christ's perspective was a humanitarian experience. And again, same was Joseph, all God's agenda. But the way God leveraged Joseph and Jesus was to be able to impact humanity, so that when Christ is lifted up, he draw all men unto himself. And being the savior and deliverer, even within Joseph's calling, when his name got changed to Zaphnath-Paneah, Zaphnath-Paneah represents the savior of the land. He was the economic savior of that time. And so when you are building your digital product ministry-preneurial type of initiative, you are actually building a storehouse. And you can look at your digital products as being the grain that is going to facilitate, yes, what is required for God's people, but also having the humanitarian calling that can bridge others into this experience. And then they also start to learn more about what the kingdom agenda and the initiative is. So you don't want to just make what you do just primarily about the ministry aspect. You can keep that primary base, of course, for your church, and for even if you have another online ministry that you are facilitating at this time, you can keep that still very signature to this. But this here is bringing you into a different level again of your expansion, because how do you even reach these lost, so to speak, if you're only targeting believers, right? So you want to be able to create that bridge. So how do you do this with digital products? Well, there are different giftings that you have that maybe you aren't sharing.